Imagine turning every mundane failure in your life into a public manual for strangers halfway across the world.
Like a dying houseplant or...
Right, a dying houseplant, a failed recipe, an algae-filled fish tank. Instead of hiding your daily struggles, you log them, you index them, and you just offer them up as data.
Which is honestly not how most of us use the internet today.
No, not at all. But today, we are taking a deep dive into a mind that does exactly that. We're pulling from this incredibly fascinating corner of the internet. It's a blog post dated March 20th, 2026, from a site called keyanmeng.org.
Yeah, and the post itself is actually relatively short. It's titled Notes on Fishkeeping Part 212.
Part 212.
I know, right? But you can't just read the text of this single entry to grasp what is actually happening here. The true value lies in the context surrounding it, the metadata, and just the sheer volume of this archive.
Yeah.
This deep dive is really an exploration of a highly analytical mindset, colliding with the messy, unpredictable realities of the natural world.
Exactly. So our author is a self-described old software plumber named Ang. And the mission for us today, for you listening, is to understand how someone who spends their entire life building rigorous, logical digital systems approaches the chaotic, biological world of nature.
And it starts with a very specific physical problem.
Right. He has some empty fish tanks, and they are currently being taken over by algae and biofilm. So he's scouting for a new species to stock these tanks with. He's essentially looking for a biological solution to his algae problem.
A living cleanup crew.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
And that leads him to consider the Tiger Hillstream, Loach, or Sewellia lineolata.
The visual description provided in the source is striking. Ang notes that it looks like a miniature stingray.
A miniature stingray? I mean, that just sounds cool.
It does. They're these flat, highly patterned, bottom-dwelling creatures.
Right.
Morphologically, they're designed to hug the surfaces of rocks and riverbeds.
Okay.
And because they're omnivorous and spend their time grazing on flat surfaces, they are absolute machines when it comes to consuming biofilm and algae.
Which makes them sound like the perfect candidate for Ang's empty algae-covered tanks.
You would think so.
I mean, if we think about this through the lens of a software plumber, Ang has a bug in his physical system, right? The bug being the algae overgrowth.
Right.
So he's looking at this miniature stingray as a highly specialized piece of hardware, or maybe like an automated cleaning bot. You deploy the bot into the environment, it executes its core function of grazing, the bug is resolved, and the system returns to a stable state.
What's fascinating here is that deploying biological hardware is vastly different from deploying digital code.
How so?
Well, in a digital environment, if you have the right permissions and the right libraries, the code just runs. But in nature, specific biological functions require highly specific environmental parameters. The physical environment has to be perfectly calibrated to support the organism. And the Tiger Hillstream Loach evolved in fast-flowing, highly oxygenated river environments.
So they need moving water.
Not just moving water. They don't just prefer high oxygen. Their entire biology is dependent on it.
Wow. Okay, so to replicate a fast-flowing river in a static glass box in your living room, that requires immediate hardware upgrades.
Exactly.
The source material notes this mandates the installation of air pumps and air stones.
Which fundamentally changes the mechanics of the tank.
Yeah.
Because air stones don't just add bubbles for decoration.
Right. They aren't just there to look pretty.
No, they create surface agitation. By constantly breaking the surface tension of the water, they allow for a higher rate of gas exchange, which pulls oxygen from the room into the water column. So it's a mandatory infrastructure change to support this specific species.
See, I'm trying to do the math on this decision-making process, though.
Okay.
We're talking about a tech veteran who is writing part 212 of his fish-keeping notes. He is deeply entrenched in this hobby. Buying a small air pump and running some plastic tubing takes, what, maybe 10 minutes? And it costs next to nothing.
True.
So why would a minor hardware addition be a deal breaker for someone this experienced? Is there a cascading effect I'm missing here?
There is a massive cascading effect, actually. And it has to do with the specific behavioral adaptations of the loach.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because their bodies are flat and designed to withstand rushing river currents, they function almost like living suction cups.
Wait, suction cups?
Yeah. They can adhere to incredibly smooth surfaces. In a home aquarium, that translates to them climbing straight up the glass walls. They are notorious escape artists.
Oh, wow. So the flat body isn't just for aesthetics or grazing. It's a functional tool that allows them to simply walk out of the environment.
They will climb right out of the water and out of the tank entirely.
That is wild.
And because of this, A completely secure, tight-fitting lid is an absolute non-negotiable requirement. You cannot have a single gap. If they find a way out, they will dry up on the floor.
Oh, yikes. And this is where the hardware dependency creates a massive conflict, right?
Yes.
Because if you're forced to run airline tubing into the tank to power the air stones for the oxygen requirement...
You inherently have to create gaps.
Exactly. You have to modify the lid to let those tubes pass through. So the very equipment required to keep the fish alive creates the exact physical vulnerabilities the fish will use to escape.
It's a compounding hardware problem.
Man, that is frustrating.
It's a textbook example of systemic friction. Ang evaluates these dependencies. He looks at the required custom configuration, the extra pumps, specialized tubing routing, lid modifications, and the lingering constant anxiety of a creature escaping its enclosure.
Right.
The required setup just introduces too many potential points of failure to a currently stable system.
Which leads to his final verdict in the post. He writes, "Based on what we've learned, while this is an intriguing fish species, the extra setup needed is not worth getting it for now."
He abandons the branch.
Yeah, he calculates the cost, realizes the dependencies are too high, and decides to pivot.
And, the decision to skip a fish purchase might seem like a fleeting, insignificant moment of hobbyist hesitation. But when you zoom out and look at the broader context of kiann.org, it becomes a crucial data point in a much larger machine.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because the scope of the site is staggering.
It really is.
It redefines the word staggering. We are looking at a meticulously categorized, continuously running database spanning from July 2011 all the way to March 2026.
Almost 15 years of logs.
Yeah, and the consistency is what caught my eye. If you look at the post counts in the sidebar, which are broken down year by year and month by month, you see this unrelenting output. For the years 2022, 2023, 2024, and 2025, Ang published over 730 posts a year.
Which averages out to exactly 2 posts a day, every single day, for 4 consecutive years.
It's unbelievable. Maintaining that level of output requires an operating system built on rigorous daily observation.
Absolutely.
And the intersection of the topics he's observing is fascinating. Because he is this old software plumber, he's handling incredibly dense technical material, but he applies the exact same analytical rigor to flora and fauna.
It's a really unique crossover.
Let's look at the active projects from just this single month, March 2026. He is simultaneously managing multiple deep serial explorations across entirely different disciplines. He's writing notes on Haskell programming, and he's up to part 87 on that.
Right, and for context, Haskell is a purely functional programming language. It is notoriously complex, highly abstract, and rooted in rigid mathematical logic.
Very dense stuff.
Oh, very. It operates in a stateless environment where inputs predictably dictate outputs. There is no ambiguity in Haskell.
Yet, alongside his highly mathematical Haskell notes, he's running a series called Notes on Gardening.
Which is the complete opposite of a stateless environment.
Completely. And he's up to part 841 on the gardening notes. Think about the discipline required to document 841 separate instances of working in a garden.
The contrast between those two pursuits really highlights his unique approach to the world. A garden is, like you said, stateful, it's chaotic, it's dependent on weather, soil chemistry, pests, and endless unpredictable variables.
You see that chaos in the specific titles from his March 2026 updates, too. In one breath, Ang is writing about optimizing code and handling initial parsing in Haskell.
Very technical.
Right. And then in the very same week, he's logging his attempts to deal with leggy seedlings. He's documenting the process of propagating crown of thorns, observing the flame dwarf cultivar, and taking note of the gelatinous pearl of a Malabar spinach.
The gelatinous pearl of the Malabar spinach.
Such a great phrase.
The phrasing there is so deeply tactile and biological. It represents a level of granular observation that most people never apply to their physical surroundings.
Exactly. You have rigid, error-free code compiling on a screen on one side of his desk, and miniature freshwater stingrays trying to escape glass boxes and gelatinous botanical pearls on the other.
But the method of processing them is identical.
Yes.
Whether it's a parsing error in his software or an algae bloom in his tank, he indexes it as actionable data.
If we connect this to the bigger picture...
Oh yeah, if we connect this to the bigger picture, pulling back to view the overarching structure of this mind reveals a comprehensive worldview rooted in his professional background.
Right, because Ang's foundation is in FlawS, right?
Yes, free Libre and open source software. And it's not merely a career path for him, it functions as an ethos that dictates how he interacts with information across every aspect of his life.
His commitment to that ethos is highly visible on the site, too. He maintains a Do Support section, advocating for organizations that align with these principles. He lists the Electronic Frontier Foundation, the Free Software Foundation, the Software Freedom Conservancy, the Tor Project, and Wikipedia.
A very specific set of organizations.
Yeah, and just as a quick reminder to you listening, our role here is to impartially report on the source material. We are not endorsing the political or social viewpoints of these organizations. What is relevant to our deep dive is what these specific groups have in common, which is that they are all institutions entirely built around privacy, open access to technology, and the free exchange of information.
Exactly. We're just looking at the pattern here. And his participation in that ecosystem is direct and multifaceted. The source notes he allows people to sponsor his work through platforms like GitHub, CPAN, PyPI, Spotify, and YouTube.
And to understand why that matters, we have to look at what those platforms represent in the tech world.
Right. Take CPAN and PyPI, for example. They are essentially massive public libraries for the Perl and Python programming languages.
Right.
Developers write code to solve a specific problem, and instead of keeping it a secret, they upload it to these repositories so anyone else in the world can use it for free. Ang is deeply embedded in a culture where sharing your solutions is the default state of being.
But the leap he makes, and this is the thing that elevates this entire blog for me, is that he takes that open source software culture and applies it to his personal hobbies. He is open sourcing his daily life.
That's a great way to put it. When a software engineer writes a program, they write documentation. They leave notes in the code so the next developer who opens the file can understand what was built, why it was built that way, and where the system is fragile.
And Ang is writing documentation for his aquariums and his plants.
Exactly. The archives list projects like Mysic fishes, spawn logs, and betta spawn logs. He tracks the complex breeding cycles of fish with the exact same precision he uses for his notes on Elixir and Erlang programming.
Elixir and Erlang being highly concurrent programming languages used to build massive, scalable systems, right?
Right. And to Ang, a scalable digital system and a thriving fish tank both require meticulous spawn logs to function properly.
And crucially, he's documenting his non-actions. He's logging his failures and his decisions to pivot. The post about the Tiger Hillstream Loach is essentially a public record of a feature he decided not to build.
In open source communities, that kind of documentation is often referred to as a commit message.
A commit message. Okay.
Yeah, when a developer abandons a line of code, they write a commit message explaining why. The purpose is to ensure the next person who comes along doesn't waste 3 weeks making the exact same mistake. They can read the message, understand that the dependencies were too complex, and try a different approach.
That makes total sense.
Ang's post about the Loach is a biological commit message.
Wow. He's providing negative data. He looked into a solution, realized the physical friction of air pumps and custom lids was too high, and aborted the mission. That transparency is vital.
Because knowing what definitively does not work, or what requires far too much custom configuration to be viable, is just as valuable as knowing what does work perfectly.
The parallels to software distribution are further reinforced by the site's disclaimer, actually. It states, quote, "All content provided in this blog is for informational purposes only. I cannot guarantee the accuracy or completeness of all information and will accept no liability for any loss or damage incurred."
It reads word for word like a software license.
It really does. It's the biological equivalent of an MIT open source license loudly declaring that the information is provided as is without any warranty. He's giving you the source code to his hobbies, but if your miniature stingray climbs out of your tank and dries up on your carpet, that is on you.
Right, you can't sue him for your fish escaping.
Exactly. So what does this all mean? Treating personal knowledge as a public good shifts how we perceive our daily routines. We often assume our small, everyday decisions are trivial. We think that unless we achieve some massive final victory like a perfectly manicured garden or a flawless, self-sustaining aquarium, our process just isn't worth sharing.
But the open source mindset argues the exact opposite. The daily logging of Part 212 is the product itself. The value is generated in the act of observing the system, not in the perfection of the final result.
Yeah, you can't possibly reach Part 841 of a gardening log without honoring those tiny, incremental daily observations. You have to find value in noticing a leggy seedling or documenting the gelatinous pearl on a leaf, even if the plant eventually dies. You are documenting the reality of a stateful system, bugs and all.
Engaging with the world as a constant problem solver requires endless curiosity and immense patience. Whether you are debugging a complex parsing logic error in Haskell or trying to calculate the escape vectors of a flatfish in a glass box, you are actively analyzing your environment.
And Aang sat in his house, looked at an empty tank full of algae, researched a fascinating creature, and realized the systemic friction was too high. He could have just closed his browser tab and moved on with his day, leaving no trace of that internal calculus.
But he didn't.
He didn't. He took the 15 minutes to write it down. He formatted the text, tagged it with the scientific name Sewellia lineolata, and published it to his continuously running database. By doing that, he permanently indexed a thought process that will outlive the specific moment.
Sometime in the future, another hobbyist with an algae problem is going to Google that exact fish.
Yep.
They'll find Aang's post, read about the high oxygen requirements and the climbing behavior, and realize their current lid setup won't work.
Mm.
By logging his own decision to step away, Aang optimized a stranger's life.
It really forces a reevaluation of our own digital footprints.
It does. Think about your own life, your own private hobbies, and your daily trials and errors. If you were to apply this open-source philosophy to your personal reality logging, your mundane successes, and actively documenting your not-worth-the-effort moments for the world to see, what kind of manual would you leave behind for the next person?
That is a fascinating question to end on. Thank you for being us on this deep dive. Keep tinkering, keep documenting, and we will catch you next time.